Sidney Powell has been found guilty of murder, felonious assault, and tampering with evidence. An Ohio woman, 23, attacked her mother with an iron frying pan and then stabbed her to death after the mom found out that she had been kicked out of college. Brenda Powell, 50, a healthcare worker, was stabbed over a dozen times by her daughter, Sidney Powell of Akron, in March 2020. Sidney, an ex-student of Mount Union University, was seen weeping in the Summit County Common Pleas courtroom after being found guilty by the jury last week. She attacked her mom because she did not want her secret to be revealed.
What we see here, this is page 2336 at the top. Is there another exchange here about Brenda inquiring of Sidney's classes?
Yes.
And I'll scroll up at the top. Can you read that, please? Brenda's message again on February 25th.
Why do I always feel like you are scamming me? Just remember that you need the grades to keep your scholarships.
And what was her response to that?
Yes, I know my grades are good. Thank you very much.
What did your investigation reveal in the days, I guess we'll go to that last week, after she's unenrolled from Mount Union, but before she comes home, right before spring break? What did your investigation reveal was Sidney's behavior?
Well, I think she still hadn't told her parents. I mean, she didn't go directly home, since she stayed at those hotels. So I don't think she had told her parents exactly what the situation was, just based on, the stays at the hotel and the phone messages that were going back and forth. That it was pretty clear her parents were still unaware of what was going on with her situation.
Sidney was apparently suspended from her college due to bad grades. However, she did not reveal this to her parents and was doing everything in her capacity to hide the truth. Her parents became suspicious of her, so Brenda was having a one-to-one conversation with Sidney about her college situation. When confronted with truth, Sidney decided to attack her mother and kill her. She later staged the crime scene and blamed everything on intruder. This case is very different from other cases as the victim and culprits both are from the same family. Even after death of Brenda, Sidney was given unconditional love and support. She was very successful in manipulating whole family, that this was an isolated incident due to her mental illness.
You were aware, or were you aware of a diagnosis that Sidney had when she came out of Akron General Medical Center?
Yes.
What was it?
Schizophrenia.
Okay.
And there were some other, things to be checked out.
Okay. And the decision was made to have Sidney stay with you after she was released.
Yes.
Why was that?
Well, first of all, Sidney was still, I think, very shocky and upset. Of course, I was still grieving. I felt all along that my Sidney couldn't have been in her right.
We understand. Just let me ask you this.
Anyways, we did it
That's
to
okay.
take Sidney to my home where I would be with her all the time.
Okay, and let me try to help a little bit. You weren't working at that time?
No.
Yeah, and was Bob working?
No.
Okay. Describe your house for the jury, if you could. What is your home like?
We live on a farm. We've got over 100 acres, and so we kind of sit back by ourselves. It's a nice home. It's over 100 years old, but it's quiet, and I have animals, which Sidney has quite an affinity to, and I just felt it would be a good environment for her.
Okay.
The defense claimed during the trial that Sidney battled schizophrenia and thus must not be held accountable for the murder. James Reardon, one of 3 defense experts who diagnosed Sidney, argued she suffered a psychotic break at the time she killed Brenda. It was pointed out that Sidney considered her mom her best friend.
So I'll ask you, Dr. Timmy, based on your knowledge, your training, your experience, based on everything you reviewed in this case, do you have an opinion within a reasonable degree of forensic psychological certainty whether or not Ms. Powell did in fact suffer a severe mental disease on the date of the offense?
It is my opinion, held to a reasonable degree of psychological certainty, that at the time of the offense, Ms. Powell was suffering from acute symptoms of schizoaffective disorder, depressive type. At the time of the alleged offense, Ms. Powell was suffering from symptoms that were so severe that it is my opinion she did not appreciate the wrongfulness of her actions at that time. In most cases where there are allegations of mental state at the time of the offense, somebody will have a long history of psychosis. They will have hospitalizations in their background. They will have significant trauma in their childhoods. They will have histories of violence and non-adherence with treatment plans and things like that that are more symbolic or that go hand in hand more frequently with these kinds of situations. In this case, all of that seemed to be absent. And so that was very interesting to me. By all accounts, this family was an intact family, a very close and loving family, and so this is an atypical case.
However, Sylvia Obratovich, a psychologist hired by prosecutors, dismissed the diagnosis. She claimed that at the time of the murder, Sydney did not meet the legal definition of insanity. However, she did acknowledge that Sydney suffers from mental health issues like borderline personality traits, malingering, and anxiety. Sydney stopped attacking with the pan, presumably went to the kitchen with a knife. She had to switch weapons and keep attacking her. Just the knife, just in the neck multiple times? That is purposeful. That is trying to end someone. Her father and other family members tried their best to stop the prosecution from taking this case to trial. They wanted a sweet deal for Sydney, but we are all glad that prosecution fought for Brenda when the other family members failed to acknowledge that she is not here because of her evil daughter, Sydney.
And her family, the maternal grandparents, support your defendant.
That is one of the reasons this case, I think, is so difficult, is because there's absolutely no winners in this case. The victim's family is torn apart by this. I know that they wanted to see a different outcome that we couldn't agree on. But the fact is that our responsibility as prosecutor's office is not just to the victims. It's also to the community. And based on the facts and the circumstances of Sydney's actions during that whole entire event, we believe that she could be a danger to other people in the community and that she was not just a danger to her mother. And so we felt that even though the family wanted one outcome, we felt that justice for the community required another outcome, and that's why we pursued this case. Otherwise, we would have resolved it in some way. So our hearts go out to the family. We understand that we disagree and that they have a different opinion, but that doesn't mean they're not suffering, and I know they're suffering and will continue to suffer, especially, Mr. Powell. I mean, his daughter, his wife, it's incredibly sad.
Now, I understand that they pleaded with you not to prosecute this case. I mean, would that have even been an option?
They asked us not to. They asked us to resolve it for, I believe it was a misdemeanor offense and some community control probation. We did not believe that that's what justice required in this case for the community. And so we just couldn't do that.
The jury saw through the manipulative behavior of Sydney and delivered a guilty verdict.
Ms. Powell, is there anything you want to say to me at this time? Okay.
I have advised Ms. Powell that given the nature of her appeal, she should not make a statement today.
And I understand that, but I have to give her the opportunity to do so. All right. Thank you very much. First of all, to the victims, to the family and friends, I am terribly sorry for your loss here. I cannot imagine what you have been through. I have received and read all of the letters that have been sent to me. I have considered the evidence that was brought into evidence at the trial, the statements of counsel, and all of the information that is before me at this time. I do find that counts 2 and 3 merge with count 1 for purposes of sentencing in this matter. Based upon the facts and circumstances of this case and in consideration of the relevant sentencing factors, including seriousness and recidivism, and applying the minimum sanction that the court has determined will protect the public and punish the offender without imposing an unnecessary burden on state and local resources, the court imposes the following sentence. On count 1, ma'am, I sentence you to an indefinite sentence of 15 years to life in the Ohio Department of Corrections. On count 4 of the indictment, I sentence you to 3 years in the Ohio Department of Corrections. Those two sentences to be run concurrent with and not consecutive to each other. Ma'am, please understand that on count 4 of the indictment, you may be subject to a period of post-release control upon your release. And if you violate that post-release control, the Adult Parole Authority is authorized to return you to prison for up to 9 months for any single violation and up to 50% of your prison sentence for all violations. Please also understand that if you're placed on post-release control and you are convicted of a new felony, in addition to being punished for that new offense, the judge could add an additional consecutive 1-year period of time in prison, whichever is greater, as a maximum. Ma'am, understand that you have a right to appeal this decision, and that notice of appeal must be filed within 30 days of the sentencing judgment entry. Your attorney has indicated to me that you are without funds to hire an attorney to represent you for appeal. Is that correct? And you wish for me to appoint counsel to represent you? Yes, sir. All right. I will do that, and we will try and get that done before you leave the Summit County Jail. Ma'am, I will not fine you. I will not assess you court costs in this matter.
Let's not forget to pay our respect to the real victim here, Brenda Powell. She was not only Sydney's mother, but she was also mother to so many children who were left without family. The day Brenda died, many kids other than Sydney lost a mother figure.
She dedicated her life after college to advocating for children at Akron Children's Hospital on the oncology hematology floor. And I was amazed that she was able to stay on that same floor for so many years, because it's such a difficult thing when children are ill and when children die. And she did. She stayed all those years with it. Many Christmas Eves that she would call and say, Mom, I'm just going to have to go back to the hospital because some of the children don't have family coming in and I want to be there for them. So she did. She always was with us on Christmas Day, but she sometimes didn't make it for Christmas Eve. But she was, I'm sorry, am I taking
it's okay. No,
she was always the organizer and the family gatherer, and Bob and I went to Disney World with them, and she made all the plans, and she would call me to ask me, is this okay and is that okay? And I said, Brenda, just give me the dollar amount at the end and I'm happy. So she planned everything, and it was wonderful because we would have never planned a trip like that on our own. So yes, that was my daughter.
Okay.